take two because I'm out of breath and my heart's beating so fast. Okay, so I want to talk to you about my very personal and extremely subjective experience about dealing with extreme creative burnout in art university. So, I went to the Open Window Institute in South Africa, and I've never quite been patriotic, but I have a lot of patriotism towards Open Window. The lecturers are extremely well educated and always supportive, and the my creative peers are amazing. Like, there are a multitude of personalities in a multitude of different schools and subjects and creative fields. So I've really never had any problems with my peers, even as a Christian in art school. Everyone has always been very considerate towards each other, and even so uplifting when you talk about your homework or your projects. We didn't really have homework. We had projects, and research papers that we had to write. So each time you talk to a peer, no matter if they have the same perspective, worldview, a different religion, it didn't matter. Everyone was there for the creative field. So I've always had such an amazing time at art school, and I really wish that I had been more involved. Hindsight is 2020, and yeah, in my previous video I told you about my graduation. It was like 8 or 9 May this year, I think. And I was so inspired being back, just because art is so close to my heart. And so dealing with burnout is so frustrating. I get mad at myself because since I could draw, I've always wanted to be an artist. I always drew squirrels in tunnels and in trees, and played with like Polly Pockets in like little streams in nature reserves, and um, I think it was my grade 1 or grade 0 teacher. She told my mom she needs to go to art classes because this kid is talented. And my mom was like, yeah, okay, I hear you, but did nothing. Not because she's a bad mom, but moms are busy. She had her own business, everything. And then again, my teacher was like, she needs to go to art classes. And so at some point, my teacher dragged my mom into the class and said, look at her work. Apparently my work was very detailed, and so my mom put me to art classes. So as a Christian, I don't want to place my identity in anything but Christ. But being an artist is like almost all I know. So having this big part of yourself, your dreams, your history, just become bare in your heart is extremely scary. And I'm still dealing with the aftermath. So my creative burnout started in my honors year. So I finished my degree I started 2020 as a first year, 2022 was second year, 2023 I was third year, finished my degree in illustration and visual communication. And let me tell you, it was hard, but it was extremely fulfilling. And I learned so much. But the catch is, if you get educated about a field and you're extremely passionate about that field, you can become critical about yourself because you've always known your art to be this certain way. And now the standard in your head, in your mind, in your educated mind, lifts. And that's the whole point of art school. You have to lift your perception of art, the theory behind it, get inspired by different worldviews, different art fields, so that you can progress as an artist. That's the whole point. So you pay a lot of money to go to art school and you expect to become a better artist on paper or video, if you do video, etc., and in your mind. And so I've always been quite self-critical. I'm not really, I'm not a perfectionist in everything in my life. But my art, yes. So that is where it becomes detrimental. And I don't like pressure. I really don't. I don't work well under pressure. When I applied for my honours year, so my honours year was 2023 to 2024. And I only wanted to do 1 year art school. I had to do 2 because I got burned out and then I had to switch to part-time to my second year. And so in my honours application, we had to write like why do you want to do honours and what makes you a good applicant? I wrote something along the lines of, I am not a diamond formed under pressure. I develop like a pearl in a clamshell, slowly and steady, something like that. So it was kind of like foreshadowing. So in my life, I've always been with the curve. You know, I didn't drop a year in school. I completed my bachelor's without any problems. And so having this big creative burnout and mental block about my own art, having to switch to a second year, costing my parents more money, which they really paid with a lot of joy, it broke my heart. So let's get into why I got creative block. And I want to talk to you about how I am feeling now, because I finished my honours last year November, and it is now the 7th of June the next year. So it's been half a year basically. And I've started working in January, which I'm very grateful to have a full-time job as a designer, and I even have some illustration work, which is very fortunate and very unfortunate at the same time. So my honours year started, and we have the whole year for one project. So in my university degree, each term was 3 months, and we had a project for that 3 months. And if you nailed it, or if you crashed and burned it, that's fine. You start a new project the next term. And that is how my years went. So having to spend 1 year on one project was extremely difficult, because in our honours year, we had to make our research, which is our research paper, and our practical body of work talk together successfully by the end of the year. Was very difficult because we had classes each week, and in those classes we had feedback sessions for each and every student each week. And so in my first year, the first semester, which is the first 6 months, we had practical classes, 4 hours, 1 class a week. And in those 4 hours, you bring your practical work and you work on it. And then at some point, you'd get like a 20-minute feedback on your own work from the lecturers. my desktop went off. So then we also had theory classes and theoretical writing. So once a week, you will get feedback, which means each week you do a bit of theory and a bit of practical. And then you developed it and you worked on it and you sketched and you planned, and then you get feedback, and then it felt like your whole concept, your whole direction it needed to develop, it needed to change, right? So because of that, I became insecure. It started feeling like I couldn't do things correctly and I couldn't do it well. Because at some point, I started getting scared of doing sketches, of illustrating, because I thought it was always going to change my concept, my theory, and it's the natural course of my honors year. Like, that's my lecturer's job, to help us think critically and develop the practical body of work and the research paper together. And so I also chose a very difficult topic. I chose cross-cultural collaboration, specifically co-design in illustration. So it meant that I had to do group work with outside parties to develop my study. So that also cost a lot of time and effort and duds in my time, in my research, in my illustrations. So that was also a very big factor about why I had to switch to part-time the next year. So with all these feedback sessions, I became insecure and I started drawing less. But you see, at some point you needed to start giving refined illustrations. But because I became insecure and because I started drawing less, refining less, I started giving less refined illustrations when it was needed. And that put a lot of stress on me. So I was extremely stressed from the second semester. The first semester went relatively without a hitch because we were developing experimental projects. And those projects were tough. It was like collaboration with other artists and non-artists, and it was just hard overall, but it was good research. You know, research is still good research, even if your project flopped. But you see, at the end of the year, you have to give in a successful project. So you can't flop your research project at the end of the year. Those are like for the first experimental projects. So now the second semester came and I started working on my final project, the one that needed to be successful. And that is where everything went downhill. So I first started working with a cultural group in South Africa, but I didn't quite understand my theory yet. What is co-design? How do I co-design as an illustrator? How do I, as an illustrator, facilitate a co-design group project with non-designers? And it was just very difficult finding resources because pairing cross-culturalism, co-design, and illustration in a field, well, in a project, is extremely difficult. I don't find sources on that, and I'm a student. I'm not going to pay 800 Rand for one source if I actually find it. So the research was a nightmare. I also think that contributed to me not feeling like I'm getting anywhere, because the research combining those three topics are so scarce. What I could find, you know, if you know about sources, please send it to me. um, and so that was difficult. And what ended up happening more, okay, so it didn't work out with this one group because I realized the direction that group wanted to go in and had time for was not my theory. It was traditional design. Oh, here is something, design it for me. That's not my research. My research is design it with me. So they didn't have time to design it with me, and it was a very bad fallout because they felt like I wasted their time, and I felt again lost in my research because now I had 3 months left because I wasted like 2 months on that project with them. So I had to find a new group and complete the practical and theory in 3 months. So the time started passing. I found a new group, but in group work, the people's schedules don't align. And I am also a slow drawer. I draw slowly, especially when I refine. So it was a mess, to be honest. And the new group I found was so sweet. It's very successful at the end of project that we had by the end of it. But the heat was on, and by that point, I was going to class during the day or working during the day, and working, like I do karate, so late afternoon I go to karate class, then I shower, I eat, and then I studied again. And so that cycle went on. So I know a lot of students are very study fit, and me too. After university, I worked days and nights and weekends all together. It's part of the course of being a student. But I started feeling very tired because of the stress of the time passing, because of the stress of the group work, because of the stress and doubt about my concepts and my theory and my illustrations. So there would be nights where I started working through the night because I felt like I needed to catch up. And working through the night is gonna catch up to you at some point. So it became like I was working in the day or going to class. I worked through the night for like twice a week. And in those days in between, like I remember Thursdays and Fridays, I couldn't focus. I couldn't work during the day, which meant that I had to work the weekend. And I don't like working in the weekend. I want to hang out with friends. I want to do this. I want to do that. So procrastination came in. It became a factor. I was like stressing my weekends away. When I hung out with people, I still stressed about the work, but I don't want to do it now because I felt so stressed from the week. I craved relaxation. And so you see, it started becoming this extremely vicious cycle that I fell in, and I couldn't get out of it. Like, I tried. But if you work through the night twice a week, for me it was Mondays and Sundays. If you work through the night, no, it was like Sundays and Tuesdays. I think it was those 2 days. I can't really remember. So, wow, it was a mess. So your brain starts short wiring. And so I also gained a lot of weight just because in the night it's like 11 p.m. I'm trying to draw. I'm crying while I'm drawing. And then I felt so hungry. And so I got something to eat, like a quick and easy sandwich or something. So I got an extra portion in during the day. So I put on a bit of weight. Not that much, but it was more than I'm used to for my body. Um, and so I also snacked during the day because of the stress. And so I started feeling not that good about my body, which also added stress, in the deep recesses of my mind. So the end of the first year, my lecturers sat me down and they told me, you have to extend because my project wasn't finished. And so I still had to work until the last deadline. And I managed to finish my project like just before graduation. Like we had an exhibition at the end of the year where all the honors students exhibit. So I finished my work, but it was too late. And I'm extremely blessed to have gone into a second year, but I felt so bad about it because I'm costing my parents more money and they need to retire in a few years. And so it was also not in my plan. I wanted to get married the next year, and so that had to be moved to over 2 years. And I wanted to get my black belt in karate, but I also had an ankle operation in my first honors year. And so then at the end of the year, while I was recovered enough to do karate again, because I was very diligent in my physio, the stress of my studies, I just eating very poorly, sleeping very poorly, stressing, getting feedback each week. And in the second semester, we got supervisor sessions. So those supervisor sessions were extra. You didn't have it in the first semester, which meant something in the lines of, on Mondays, I had a 4-hour class with 20 minutes feedback for me personally. Then on Wednesdays, 2 o'clock, I had my supervisor session, which was 1 hour. And it is amazing how much feedback you can get in 1 hour. So it meant that Sunday nights I didn't sleep because I worked for Monday's class. Monday afternoon and night I was extremely tired, so I didn't work. Tuesdays and Tuesday nights I didn't sleep because I was working for Wednesdays. Wednesday morning I worked until 2 o'clock for my supervisor session. Wednesday nights I couldn't work, I was too tired. So Thursdays and Fridays I tried to work, but I was so tired. And then I had to work the weekend. So that was the extremely vicious cycle that I found myself in. And so in my supervisor sessions, instead of just 20 minutes, it was an hour, which is a lot of feedback to try and apply for Monday the next week. And I really think my personality didn't gel with it because there are many students, all the honors students, we suffered. But I think a lot of students took it a lot better than I did. Not everyone got this big creative burnout that I did. And they completed successful projects at the end of the year. So I'm so proud of them. But yeah, my personality, I'm not sure. I hate criticism and I hate pressure. So that was like not fun at all. And so I started my second year with a new group of people. I actually went to South Korea. My sister lives there and teaches English there. I went for 3 months on a visa, and I collaborated with some of her South Korean friends there. And so that was amazing. And by that time, my theory was settled. I knew what co-design was in my research context, and I was battling with my research paper. Oh, I'm usually a good writer. Like, I can write well, and I can write critically. But with the constant feedback of my practical changing and my theory changing and developing and speaking to one another, and pitfalls in your research that you have to address, and this and that, my writing started to suffer. So I started procrastinating on my writing, and then I had to catch up, and like very quickly, and it was a mess. So self-discipline and diligence wasn't there, because of the insecurity. So the rest of the year, the second year went by, and in the second semester I had to go back to class again. So in that second term, I was back with the next year's honours peers, because a new first year class comes in and there are some second year students. Like, I think I was the only student they told you need to. No, I wasn't the only student that was told we needed to do a second year. And there are students who did it by choice. They, at the start of the first year, they were like, yeah, we're going to do it over 2 years. Great, sharp. And so that last part of the year, by that time, I was so scared of drawing. Like, I'm a very visual person, and so when it was me, myself, and I at my desk here, late at night, my parents are sleeping or watching a movie, being with each other, I had to sit and draw or write. And that's usually fine if you're in a good mood. But I would sit here and I physically couldn't draw. I felt paralyzed. And there was this metaphor in my mind that kept expanding. It's very weird to think about it that way. But it started at the end of my first year when I started getting paralyzed about drawing. I was so this is the metaphor. I was in a desert, right? And there were like these sandstone structures in the background, and I held a sword in my hand, my battle sword, and I was fighting this dragon in the mud, trudging through the mud. Like, it was almost like my hand tried to get enough strength to draw. It was like trudging through mud. I would draw, I would stop. I would draw, I would stop. I would cry, I would pray, I would get some tea or a sandwich, I would try again. And after a while, after fighting the dragon, time and time again, the image would develop. Suddenly there's no mud anymore, just dry sand. No moisture. And I was alone. The dragon was gone. But I was alone in that desert, in the dry sand, fighting nothing, being nowhere, having no hope. Emptiness all around me. That metaphor represents my heart. So, it's very weird to think about it, this metaphor in my head developing, but yeah, so that was quite vivid imagery I saw in my mind. And so I would listen to this gospel music with my headphones, crying while trying to draw. And the gospel music would help until a point. So then you may ask, why did you continue? If you felt this way for 2 years, even at the end of my first year, why would you continue the study if the garden of your heart, the garden of your passion, is dead? It's because of my vision that I have from God. I know that with this qualification, God is going to do amazing things. I need my mind and my thinking and my experience and my heart to develop to this point, and I need that qualification for my dream. And so I was like, it was like a dumpster fire all over me, all around me, inside my heart. But I had a vision. And so my parents many times asked me, do you want to continue? You can't quit. And I was like, no. I have this divine revelation from God, and I will do it. But it did leave me a torn out garden in my heart. So I finished the year by the grace of God. I finished my honors, and I finished it well. Like, I'm sure my poor lecturers, my poor supervisors, they had a field day with me. It's not right to assume thoughts of another person, but I'm like, I really think I was a trouble student, a difficult student. And because my parents aren't in my head, they aren't in my classes, they aren't the student, they didn't understand the pressure, the crying, the redo of your research and your illustrations. And so they didn't understand my lectures. And they didn't understand why I always say, I respect my lecturers to the moon and back. So my lecturers are so educated and amazing illustrators. Like, I love their work, and they've always encouraged me. They have never told me I couldn't do it. They have never been like ugly with me if I didn't hand in good work or work at all. They always supported me, always said, Anya, you can do this. Anya, try this. And so they were doing their job, and they were doing it very well. Like, this is part of the course. This is what I signed up for. And they do that with every student. Each and every student is pushed to have an excellent research paper and practical, no matter what field. And so all of us students, we went through the same thing. And so I still love my lecturers, and I'm so grateful to them for their encouragement, for their knowledge, for their time and effort that they put into me for 2 years. And so it was hard and it was difficult, but it was good. And so when my parents asked me, is it your lecturers? Is it this? Is it that? I'm always like, no, it's me. I'm the problem. And so I finished my work, and I got to exhibit along with my peers, but I was burnt out. I remember not revising the last revision of my research paper before handing it in. Like, I had a lot of comments on my Google Doc from my supervisors, and I handed it in just like that. I still had some practical illustrations to do, and I did something, and I handed it in just like that. So my attitude wasn't excellent student behavior, I think a better student would revise your research paper before handing it in again and get like the last round of feedback before you handed in your practical work. But at that moment, it suddenly felt like I couldn't care less, which that was scary, because I've always cared. Sometimes too much, sometimes too much, adding pressure on myself that wasn't even given by my lecturers, because I can get in my head. I can make things bigger in my head than it is. We have an expression in Afrikaans, om 'n berg van 'n mos hoop te maak. It directly translates to make a mountain out of a mole's small hill, And my mom is an extremely sweet, soft-hearted, no-nonsense person. And I am soft-hearted, and I have a bit of nonsense in my head. I'm not gonna lie. So she gave me perspective. And my dad, he made tea like there's no tomorrow. Oh, Anya's crying. Just give her some tea. And a hug. And, oh, this thing, just give her some tea. So I drank a lot of tea, let me tell you. And Rika's my then boyfriend, now my fiance. He always held me when I was crying. We were in the same classes. We met in university, but he didn't do honors. He went straight to working, so he didn't do honors with me. And I've always been so angry at him because of it, because I'm like, we need to suffer together, like, no, but there were certain factors that made that he couldn't do honors. But suddenly going from working with your partner, working with the creative in your classes, each night on Google Meet, just another presence at night when your parents are sleeping or watching a movie in the other part of the house was so comforting. And suddenly losing that and being alone was a very big transition for me, and it was not a good one. That's why I say I wish I was more involved. I wish I talked to my peers more. I wish I had more study sessions with them. I wish I was more on campus with them. But stress and fear is irrational. You can't make it logical. It can't make sense. And so this fear that was over me was not logical. And it made me do stupid shit. So I'm really not proud about it. There is a lot of things I should have done different. I needed to talk to my supervisors more. But I don't like struggling. I don't like showing that I'm struggling. And so sometimes when I really needed to, I didn't talk to them. I tried to be a good student in their mind, and because fear is irrational, I thought if I shared this very intimate journey, they would think less of me. I think it comes down to that. And that is not something that is encouraged in my house. My parents never, ever expect of me to be perfect, to be this, to be that. Very loving parents. So that's why I say, this thing is irrational and it's not from God. It makes you think differently. It makes you act differently. It makes you act out of fear and out of pride. Even though you've grown up in a household for 23, 24 years, now 25, without having any of that influence. And so, yeah, hectic. So, I remember sometime this year, while I was illustrating for a project for my work, I got a new revelation. And God is so good. So, the impact my honors has on the future me, the now me, is astronomical. That burnout has wilted and torn out my creative garden like nothing I've experienced ever before. My garden is empty. And so when I am designing for my job, which is 95% of the time, I am fine. I am happy. I'm learning. I'm doing things. I feel like my job is important in the world and brings good into the world and has a good impact on the world. So my designing is fine. But when I illustrate, there are some projects for my work that I have to illustrate. And it's great because I wanted to be an illustrator full time. But I want to marry, and so this was a very good job to get. And full-time job 2 months after you stop studying is such a blessing. So I am now a designer and I'm very proud of it. But when I illustrate, I can't breathe. I remember getting such anxiety in my honors those 2 years that I couldn't breathe. I clamped up here and my hand felt like lead. And after such a long time of your heart bleeding, I became so anxious. My thoughts were derailed for a moment there. So at the end of my first year, in December, I knew I was going to do second year. And I knew it was going to be hard. So I went to my doctor, who's known me forever, and I was like, I need anxiety medication. And she was like, no, it's addictive. And I was like, okay, then what? So she prescribed me a very low dose of antidepressant medication for my second year. In grade 8 or grade 9, I was on Afrikaans accent. I was on antidepressant medication for about 6 months because high school was difficult. It was very difficult to adjust from primary school, where I had it all, to high school, where my angsty teen self was not in a good space socially. So, I, as a Christian and as a human being, my stance is, if you utilize medication for your mental health correctly, I am all for it, because I know how it helps. I love therapy. I love medication for when you need it. That sounds bad, but now I'm pro medication. I'm pro therapy because it's helped me so much in my life. So I was like, okay, I need this medication, and my doctor described it like this. The serotonin paths in my brain are blocked, and they need to flow again, telling me I can draw, I am a good illustrator, I am smart, I can do this, My stress curve, she described it as in a diagram. She drew it for me. The curve goes like this: stress and stress and work, or something like that. So if your work comes to a point that is stressful, but a good stressful point, you can do your work. Usually you see it before deadlines, you suddenly, you work and you perform. Whereas in the weeks up to the deadline, you work like a bit slower. That is a healthy stress point to be at. That's where you want to be to perform. Like just before a deadline, you're performing, but you're doing it and you're doing it well. And it's hard, but you get it right. But then there comes a curve where your stress is beyond that healthy stress point. And this extra curve is negative. It means that you can't work because you are overly stressed. I was there in that red for 2 years. Oh, year and a half, if you will, I stressed so much I couldn't work. So that is why I went on the medication. It was like the medication, for transparency, was Lexamil 10 milligram, and I broke it in half once a day. So I got like 5 milligram of Lexamil for 1 year, and I could feel it working. Like, I could feel it. Suddenly, I didn't feel like I can't do anything. I also didn't feel like, yes, I can do it. It was just enough for me to draw something. And so my mood was better, but it was still very hard and traumatizing. So I remember 1 week before a final hand-in, like final, and I'm not proud of this moment. I hard quit that medication because I was angry. Can you believe it? So 1 week before my final hand-in of my research paper and my practical illustration body of work, I suddenly became so angry that I went on medication to survive my second year, that I hard quit that medicine right on the spot. I do know that you are most likely to get very adverse negative effects if you hard quit antidepressant medication. A part of my brain knew 5 milligrams. I don't think it's that much. That's what my brain told me. Don't follow this advice. But because I was angry, remember I was irrational, and I knew it was kind of a low dose, I hard quit it. And at that point, between being sleep deprived twice a week and not exercising because I quit karate basically for a year and a half because my body couldn't function. I couldn't do karate. And because of my stress levels and my overeating, I don't know if I felt adverse effects for those next few weeks because I was already feeling crappy physically. So I don't know if I had adverse effects. I'm not sure. Maybe, but maybe it was the stress. I don't know. So with the karate, if you don't eat well, if you eat too much, if you eat just before karate, if you didn't eat enough during the day, if you didn't sleep well or enough hours, if you're stressed about something, it affects your karate, because karate is a very precise martial art. You know when you're doing wrong in karate. You feel it. You feel your standard and it's below par. But the thing that made me not go exercise anymore was not my body not doing things. It was the feedback. Imagine getting feedback twice a week from your lecturers and then having to go to karate 2 to 4 times a week, getting feedback on your karate. It killed me. And so when I went to karate, I was instantly in a bad mood, and I would start crying with the warm-up because I was scared of the coming feedback on my karate stance and this and that. That is how bad my mental burnout was. And so my poor sensei, he asked me regularly, how am I what can I do to help? He would take me to get breakfast, and talk to me. So I'm really grateful to him and my dojo for reaching out, because I think they saw this girl is not fine. But I did stop going to practice and I started going to the gym, but not that regularly. But like, I didn't get feedback at the gym, so it became a safe space for me to do things. And in those last moments, in the moment that I rage quit, remember I was talking about not caring at all? In that moment, I didn't care anymore about my study. I didn't care about my research paper. I didn't care about my illustrations. I didn't care anymore. And I rage quit my medication. But that didn't care anymore was so scary, just getting back to that topic. Afterwards, a few weeks after, I was like contacting my therapist, aka ChatGPT, because I was alone in night. It was like 12 o'clock. I was crying in my bed, just frustrated, thinking about what I just went through and just finished. And I was like, just talking to ChatGPT because I was so lonely. I know a lot of people do it. It's not just me. um, and then I was like, I didn't care anymore. And then ChatGPT was like, I don't know how true it is. I haven't gone and fact checked it, but ChatGPT was like, that is what burnout does. It gets you to a point where you've stressed and stressed and stressed. And I told ChatGPT, it's like I stressed all of my stress out. I can't stress anymore. And ChatGPT was like, that is a result of stressing too much. Like, your body goes into protective mode, switching off that stress so that you survive. Now, I don't know if my brain would have exploded or what, but like, my stress was like off. Couldn't care anymore. And yeah, so that was scary. Not the stress wasn't scary, the not stressing was. And so yeah, I'm hopping topics here. But like, the impact it has now when I'm actively illustrating, I can't breathe. And that is scary too, because I've never been able to not breathe. I've never had such high levels of anxiety that I had shortness of breath. So I doubt every stroke. And like, my colleagues and my parents and Rikus, they all love what I do. They all encourage it. And when I show them, they're like, oh, this is cool, what? And in my head, I'm like, can't you see it's crap? Because I do, a big part of my work is editorial illustration for the personnel monthly newsletter. So it's just for the personnel. It's not going out of the company. It's for the people in the company. So it doesn't make money. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't cost the company if it's a bad illustration, But when I sit there and I try to illustrate one illustration for an article in the monthly newsletter, and that article is usually a funny story, I get paralyzed. And it's 6 months later, and I'm also creating a mascot for an existing app that the company has, so that is extremely super cool. But I cry with every illustration. I meet my deadlines, you know, oh, sketches for this deadline is then. I would cry, I would work overtime, I get it done, but I always feel so inadequate. And because this is irrational, my brain forgets about all the amazing illustrations I have made ever. It forgets about this amazing story, this children's book illustrations I did. It makes me forget about this poster that I did. It made me forget about this and that. And it tells me there is nothing. There's nothing in your garden. You are not creative. You can't draw. This is not good enough. That won't work. This idea is stupid. This thing's concept does not fit the concept it needs to. And that is such a burden. It's such a burden. So I cry and I do it. It takes me a few days and I'm not proud of it. I feel like sometimes I waste time. I wish I could just draw. And so my illustrations feel bare. I question every stroke of my pencil, of my stylus. I question every pose. And this is important, when an artist questions their illustrations, their work, it becomes bare. You can't just draw and be expressive and experiment and the ideas just fit into place at some point during the creative process. It's this stroke, it doesn't do what it needs to. Maybe try that. So it becomes so stiff and unimaginative and not creative. And then I feel worse because my garden is dead. So what I'm trying to do is plant a new garden. I am actively planting seeds because I love illustration. I love creatives. I love their passions. I love inspiration. I love the world of creativity. I have dreams. I have a God-given dream for my illustration, for the purpose of my creativity. But it feels like I've lost a person. I've lost my friend. They say, there's a saying that goes, losing a dream is like losing a person. It hurts just as much, maybe more, because it's a part of yourself. And I feel that way in my heart about my illustration. I mourn the loss of my hand just drawing. I mourn the loss of joy when drawing. I am actively in mourning. And with this experience, the whole point of this video is to educate other creatives who may be going through burnout too. I don't know if anyone will even see this, but this garden I'm planting comes with this channel because it forces me to do things. It forces me to become creative again for myself as kind of like a vlog. And like I said in the previous video, there's a lot of things I want to do with this channel. I want to invite other artists. I want to collaborate. built up my own studio. And so this is a part of my story. And I hope that people can resonate with my story. But my story doesn't end with my creative burnout. It doesn't end with an empty wilted garden. Like in my garden, there aren't even wilted plants, there's just sand. So the hope I have, the hope that's still alive in my heart, my dream, my passion, my love for my field is still there. And this hope will drive me to healing, to more passion, to illustrating with a healthy mind and heart. And I am still, like I said to my family, this is my year of healing. And it sounds so stupid. Oh, you went through 2 years of honors and in art school and only 2 years of honors art school. Like, what can that do to you? It sounds so stupid. But 2 years is a long time to become traumatized. I am hopeful for the future. So this revelation that I had a few months ago, I was sitting at my desk again at night, which I don't often do anymore because I work a full day and then I switch off at nights and on weekends, unless I have to catch up because we have like flexi time. So if I need to pop out of the house, I need to catch up. So when I sat at my desk again for the first time in a while at night, I was reminded of my time in honors that I was sitting at my desk with my earphones on, with gospel music in my ears, crying while illustrating. And I saw this vision of the angels rejoicing over me while I was crying. And it feels so weird. I think for someone who doesn't have a personal journey with God, I don't think you'd understand that intrinsically like I do in my heart. Maybe that would be super cool if you do. But God and his angels was rejoicing over me while I was pushing through honors. They were rejoicing over me for keeping alive the hope in my heart, the dream in my heart that God planted. They were rejoicing over the immense blessing of me continuing my work through it all, continuing my work through pain and sleeplessness and stress and medication and a tired body that was gaining weight, of crying, of stopping exercising, of having my poor aunt stress over me, praying over me each day, over my parents asking me, do I want to quit? Over myself asking me, do I want to quit? Over myself saying each and every day in second year and at the end of first year, I want to quit. Each day. Like, that is not an exaggeration. Rejoicing in my suffering, because that is testimony. That is testimony about God's goodness for my future. That is testimony of him carrying me through this season. That is my testimony as an artist who can live through this and testify about God's goodness at the end of it all. Oh. So, I want to illustrate this vision. I want to do that. And I am scared. I'm extremely scared of doing it because I don't like illustrating. But this illustration would be such an encouragement to see, and I hope that it can inspire others, and also bring hope to any creative. And if you're religious or not, doesn't matter, to bring hope that through your suffering there is sufficient grace for you to get through it. Like there was sufficient grace for me to get through my honors. And look, maybe I can't show you, there's a lot of like confidential details on it. My honors degree certificate is right there. And my bachelor's is right there on my wall. These two certificates is testimony about God's sufficient grace over my life. So yeah, I'm now just babbling. This is a long video, but this is my experience with burnout and post-burnout, and how I am healing and getting through it and getting encouragement through it. So yeah, so here's to more healing and more passion. More passion, more energy, more feedback. Anyways, yeah, so if you actually made it to this end, thank you so much for listening. I really hope that all creatives who go through burnout, big or small, will get to the other side as an even better creative than they were before, either by upgrading their minds, upgrading their hearts, upgrading their skill, and upgrading their vision through tough times. Because I really can feel my mind has developed. Like, it has expanded so much. I don't even think I would be even starting this channel without having been through this and being desperate to heal, being desperate to get back into illustration without any strings attached. Yeah. So, God is good, and I'm so thankful for everyone who supports me. Have a good one.